One of the things that was humbling and funny to me was, I'd come up with this digital first business and, I had this back end that would show every case that's much like Parting Pro, show you how many cases you had, what did they order, et cetera, et cetera. And what did my director do but go and get a whiteboard and hang it on the wall? God love her. But that was her comfort, and it felt comfortable to her to just write it out. And as technologists, we need to be aware of what those comforts are and how we can, if we really believe it's necessary, overcome it, and now with multi-location places, it is necessary.
Welcome to the Direct Cremation Podcast with your host, Tyler Yamasaki. Hi, thank you for joining us on the Direct Cremation Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Yamasaki, CEO of Parting Pro, the #1 cremation arrangement software for funeral homes. If you like the content, please give us a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. So today's guest is as accomplished as they come, starting her professional career as a lawyer, graduating from one of the finest schools in the world, and my alma mater as well, UCLA. After a short stint working in law, in 2016, established the MKJ Nashville office, where she led the digital growth team. While also not ignoring the service side of death care, she also launched a digital cremation brand, which was quickly acquired by a large consolidator. Today, our guest serves as the president of commercial markets for Tribute Technology, the largest software company in death care. So I'd like everyone to welcome my guest today, Courtney Gould-Miller.
Hey, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I know you're busy, but thank you very much for joining us today. We could go on a million things, and you've done a lot, but I want to kind of start, I guess, at the beginning. I think your resume is much more accomplished than what I've mentioned here in the short few sentences, and I'm sure everyone would love to hear, from your whirlwind journey to where you are today. If you can give like a better summary of that.
Sure. Well, I start my career, I think, from the very beginning, just growing up in the death care profession. My parents have a long history in the profession. They met at Batesville Casket Company and eventually founded MKJ Marketing. We're now in our 43rd year of business, serving clients. And so death care was something that I've always known. And what I knew most was that funeral directors are the very best people I know. And they care for all of us at the most difficult times in our lives. And they're local businesses, they're family businesses, and they're so important to our communities. And while I did think I would go and be a lawyer and practiced after UCLA law, the family business brought me back after about 10 years in LA. I have always identified with entrepreneurship and the ability to do things quickly, move, try different things, see what works, make mistakes, learn from them, and keep going. And that was something that I knew from the roots of my family business and decided to make the move back to that. Law is a little different than that. It's very structured. We would be on the same case for a long time. And while I learned a lot about not only obviously the law, but serving clients, and had the chance to do things like foreign corrupt practices investigations in China. That's ultimately what my focus was with law. It was actually the China practice. So I eventually found my way back into the family business, just looking for ways to continue to transition funeral homes into a digital world. I had used digital marketing with my law practice with China, and a few of our clients had actually asked me to come and speak about what I did for our law practice, just knowing me from growing up. And so that was really the beginning of bringing me back in, was to think, now 10 years ago, the funeral space was having its first interactions with social media and SEO, and the website as the center of that brand experience. And so I was able to come in and educate from that perspective and help a lot of firms launch their direct cremation businesses, as that then became a trend as well. And so now, yes, joined as Tribute Technology in the beginning of 2022. And MKJ is now a brand as a part of Tribute Technology. And I have had the honor of continuing to serve all of our clients, as well as thousands of funeral homes across North America. Just recently being promoted into the president role of commercial markets for Tribute. So love this space, love direct cremation specifically as an area. And I'm happy to talk about my experience with founding a direct cremation business as well.
Sure. Why don't we talk about that? So you were working at MKJ, helping funeral homes grow and, doing a little bit of you also did like websites and technology and marketing, right? All at MKJ, advising in legal affairs a bit. But in 2020, you decided to open your own cremation brand, Lumen.
Yeah. Correct? Lumen Cremation.
What was the thought process behind, what made you think that was the opportunity that you wanted to pursue at the time?
So when you think about a digital business, it's so important to see all aspects of the funnel, all aspects of the customer journey. And in helping many of our firms launch these digital first businesses for direct cremation, we only saw the front end of it. We only saw how much traffic we were driving. We could see interactions on the website. We could see the different channels, right, that were performing well, whether it was SEO, social media, traditional, et cetera. But when it came to did that phone call or did that case complete and at what rate, and what were the roadblocks and what were those phone calls like? What were the questions that people had? We had very little visibility, even with clients who were very interested in providing us with information. Maybe their record keeping or tracking of, win-loss on every call wasn't very strong. It would fall off. They would be good for a little bit and then fall off as they got busy. And that was totally understandable. But my curiosity was really to just own that whole process and have visibility and see what are aspects of every step of the funnel that I could impact to improve the experience for families as well as improve conversion rate. So I had the opportunity of helping Mark Krause up at in Milwaukee launch Milwaukee Cremation right after the pandemic. And it was the first time that a client really gave me total control, like name it, come up with what we're going to charge, tell me what you need for a budget. It was kind of the dream situation to be able to just say, well, this is what I think. Okay, let's do it. And so that really gave me the confidence to say I can do this for myself, because I really directed the whole process with him. And they grew very quickly. Obviously, it was pandemic, but they grew really, really quickly. And had great experience with it. And I also learned from Mark, who is a longtime client and friend, the operational side, because he's a very open book. And so, I would hear his conversations with his staff and understand some of the logistical challenges. And so that was another thing that prepared me for this. And so after that experience and seeing the success there, I took the plunge with my husband to establish Lumen Cremation. We are not funeral directors, so we hired a director to help us with it. And she was an integral part of getting it off the ground and, just being an excellent funeral director. But we, and specifically, I spent the most time directing the marketing strategy, listening to phone calls, thinking about the process, working to make the entire thing online with minimal phone or very little in-person interaction. And that was another big opportunity of this, because some firms that we had, and I'm sure you see this, they knew they needed to get into online cremation, but then when it came down to it, they would do the arrangement over the phone, or they would even do the arrangement in person, right?
Yeah.
And the whole benefit of this, not only to the family, but to the staff, is the efficiency that you achieve with a truly online arrangement. And so we pushed people back to the website to complete all of the arrangement online. And we had some pretty amazing results because of that. Not only were we able to truly track beginning to end, what was our conversion, where would drop off, things like that, but we also had a lot of success limiting our arranger time per case to the point where, and I would track all of these things, but our average phone call length was 2 minutes and 34 seconds. And that was something I was always looking to minimize because, I would talk to directors who would say, oh, well, our directors are on the phone for half an hour with these cases. And that doesn't save you much at all. Right.
Yeah.
And so just those learnings were what prompted me to do this. And I have tons more I could share, but it was just so much fun to learn and to really have the opportunity to serve families directly, to learn from them and serve them.
Yeah, what's really interesting when you talk about that is how you stress a lot of the parts of the business that I think traditional death care providers don't focus on as much, right? Like the costs of phone calls, the marketing, the getting new customers in, the efficiency, right? We always hear on the more traditional side, it's all about service and white glove and how much can we personalize this. And on a cremation brand, it's, whether you like it or not, it's a lot different in what you have to focus on to become a successful business. And so hearing you talk about that, it's almost like the opposite of what, traditional brands really focus on a lot of times.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's completely flipping it on its head. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I recommend to funeral homes who are starting a direct cremation brand or trying to grow one, right? They might have one, but it hasn't done a lot,
Yeah.
is to, as quickly as possible, put an owner or, a manager, a leader of that brand that is in no way associated with your full service firm, because it
Mhm.
is very, very hard to wear both those hats at once.
Yeah.
I find the only people who can even sort of wear both hats at once is the owner, right?
Yeah.
Because they are the people who are most used to thinking about, you know, cost per case or what are our cogs here? How do we keep it relevant or relative to what we're charging? Directors
Yeah.
don't think about most of that at all, and the owners can kind of keep both in mind. But here's what often happens: then I find the owner of a full service, successful business is the one answering the phone for the direct cremation firm. And I'm
Mhm.
like, you can't be giving them, direct cremation families the biggest asset, which is access to you as the owner, right? Like, I mean, you can maybe do
Yeah.
that for a little bit, but that's really confusing your brand identity and just not being the most efficient and effective with your time. So, as soon as you can, have somebody own that business on their own. Could be a director, could be even, depending on regulations, not a licensed funeral director, but someone who's really empathetic on the phone, who's really good at understanding technology and can equip the families to go back to that site and complete it. Those are the most important things with having somebody lead your direct cremation brand.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've seen it where it's hard to make that switch where you answer the phone in a certain way, you serve a family in a certain way, and then it's like, oh wait, no, we have this other brand, and they can't make that switch. They're still answering the same way. They're still trying to provide as much of the same type of service, and it just doesn't work. So I think that's a big a big one that you said right there.
Yeah.
So in opening your own brand and serving the public, as vendors to death care, we always have our own advice and what we see. And sometimes we're like, oh, it seems so simple or easy to do this. And, we're not necessarily always in it in the day to day,
Mhm.
but, you actually jumped into it. And what were some of the things that you learned serving the public that you may not have understood or that surprised you, you know, from purely working just as a strategic vendor before that?
Oh, that's such a great question. I learned a lot of things. One thing that surprised me was even on a 995 cremation, how many families needed to split that payment. I
Mm,
think the most was 20 ways one time.
wow.
How important it is. I mean, and that's a 995 cremation, so I obviously take these learnings into full service where they apply as well. How important it is that we give payment options to people, presenting insurance assignments, presenting at need loan financing, presenting different types of payment plans, different packaging options, because there are just families who need more options for payments. So that was a learning for me for sure.
Hmm.
I think another insight, I know the empathy and I know the relationship building that occurs in person in an arrangement room, and how critical that is to many families in their grief process, and just the association with that funeral director, how what a bond is created. What I did not anticipate is how you can actually do that over the phone and in not very much time. And I think that was counterintuitive to things I'd heard, I would say, from directors who do pride themselves on the service, as you said, right? That kind of white glove experience. And there's so much to be said about that. But I think serving families the way that matters to them might be convenience, might be speed, efficiency. Often we heard, you're the only provider who answered the phone, or you're the only provider who called me back. I called multiple funeral homes.
Yeah.
You're the only one who called me back. The way, right? Like the way that the people answered the phone and talked to the families who called us. We had amazing directors who were so compassionate, great listeners, really, really good at helping families feel heard in, again, just a few minutes. So that was really surprising to me, how much you can do with not very much time, but just a genuine heart to listen and care. And that's something that I've really challenged funeral homes with, because phone etiquette, phone skills remains I think, one of the most important things. We can have the best websites, we can have amazing planners, regardless of full service, direct cremation, et cetera. Often there's going to be a phone call in there, and it might only be a few 30 seconds. But that relationship is really, really important. And it became very clear. We have only had 5-star reviews on our Google. At the time that I sold it, we had 50 5-star reviews from families. And we weren't that big. It had only been 2 years. And we were serving hundreds of families a year. But they felt that connection in just a little while. And so that was surprising to me.
Yeah, I want to go back. I mean, I want to touch on that a little. I think some of the biggest brands that we work with take pride in how good their phone etiquette is. It's not even how good their in-person service is, because they don't have a lot of that, right? And we've had brands try to launch sometimes where it's you get put on hold a long time, or you even go direct to an answering service, and those just usually never work. And I can't stress enough how important that phone call is, and how much trust you can build in a 2 to 10 minute phone call. That can make all the difference. That can make or break your cremation business, for sure.
Another thing that surprised me, I've heard a lot about the importance of hospice, of course, as a referral source. One of our top referral sources was the medical examiner. And I haven't heard many people tap into that referral source. Our directors worked on a relationship there, and we became their top referral choice, and it drove a lot of business. So that was an insight that, again, I didn't know before really experiencing it, but it did make me a bigger believer in the importance of those referral relationships and providing resources to them as well. One of the reasons that we became one of the top referral sources was we had a lot of free resources on our website.
Yeah.
We had advanced directives that were free for people to download. And then we also had a guide about the period of time. There are a lot of people who are looking to make plans before the death has actually occurred. And so what we did was, when that was the case, we would drive them to a download that would help them walk through some steps just to be thinking about.
Yeah.
And that was another thing that our referral partners really liked. It was just that free resource to help answer questions before the death had actually occurred.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When you're working in a cremation brand, your CAC, or your cost of acquisition, is super important, right? When you have such small margins. So any way you can get, I know they're not free because you're putting in time with that, building that relationship, but anytime you could get non-paid dollar referrals, it's always amazing.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
So you were doing this for a couple of years. You had grown a business that was actually, doing well. You were in a pretty big metropolitan market. So, you probably, it sounds like you were doing a couple hundred, but you probably could have grown that to probably 1,000 a year if you wanted to. What made you decide that it was time to sell the business rather than maybe operating it long term?
Yeah.
Why don't we start there?
It was a bittersweet decision for me, for sure. I loved the business. We were having success. Families were truly satisfied with what we were offering to them. We were different than any of the providers, and we had a lot of competition, a lot of different cremation providers in the market. We'd been recognized nationally for what we were doing. We were written up in Forbes. We were on the local TV station, different people focusing on, how we were different, which was really special. The reason that I didn't continue with it was two things. One, we were using a trade crematory at the time, and to make the business continue to scale, we would have had to acquire our own crematory. We tried, but various reasons it didn't pan out. And to build one would have been very expensive in Metro Nashville. And so, we pursued a few things, but ultimately it was looking like we were going to have to make a very big investment to do that. And at the same time, I was joining the executive team at Tribute, and a lot going on for me personally. And so it just became the right time to say, let's let someone else take this to the next stage. And, it was the right decision for us at the time. But I truly love this business and the space, not only for the profession, but also for consumers, because I think it's important that we not prejudge what people want and what they should want, and instead really listen to the things that are important to them. And this is tapped into an important segment of the market. And I think there's a way to do it well. I think there's a way to do it with dignity. Unfortunately, direct cremation often gets a bad rap inside of the profession. And I don't think it deserves that. I think there are really ways to do it with high quality service. It's just different service, to your point. I think there's ways to do it really well digitally that make it a seamless experience for families, and something that many of them truly want. And another reason that I started this business was years and years before. My dad and I had been doing a market research study with it was a focus group, and we were talking about direct cremation for some of our clients and getting feedback about the concept. And there were so many people that really resonated with the ability to do this planning online, that it just showed me, there are different service offerings that are needed in our profession. And it's not that this is less than in some way, but instead it's just different. And we also need to do it with excellence.
Yeah. I think the one takeaway is that different people are always going to value different things.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, right? Some are going to look for efficiency, cost, or time. It all depends on what they value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this is a little bit of a tangent, but there's been a lot of consolidators coming into the market that are consolidating funeral homes. Both some of the biggest names in the traditional space, as well as some of the biggest names in the cremation brand. What would you say are some of the factors that owners should think about today when considering something like an acquisition? Because I know there's a bunch that have successful businesses, and I know during COVID, some of them just decided this is it. It was too much, and they got out. But I mean, I'm sure as more and more consolidators come into the space, there's going to be offers, and there's going to be people that are willing to put them up. Like, what do you think are some of the factors that they should consider?
Yeah, so good. We're seeing a lot more acquisitions happening now that capital is freeing up, and we're coming into slightly better economy, at least for now. Let's hope. I think there's a couple things. One, having run two businesses and two very different businesses, one is a startup, one taking over a multi-generational family business. I really tell everyone, run your business like you could sell it tomorrow. That is how you should run it. And that doesn't mean you will sell it. It could be something that you pass on to the next generation. It could be something that, is your whole career, and that's an amazing thing. But run it like you could sell it. Run it, based on best principles for being able to sell it. And that means thinking about EBITDA as well as a revenue. That means, having contracts with people and not just doing everything handshake deal. We could go through a whole list, but I think everyone should be running their business for sale, just in their mind, so that they're really running the business as a good steward of the resources. And I think it makes you be more critical of staffing decisions, of investment decisions. You know, if you're going to invest in an area, doing the due diligence and research to say, I think it's going to pan out, and here is my goal, and this is my objective from a revenue and EBITDA perspective, and this is the investment that it's going to take, and I can tell that that's a return on investment that will work for me. That was a big part, again, of why we ended up determining that we should sell it, because the investment into a crematory in our particular market, which Nashville's booming, it was hard to get the return on investment for that. And I only would have known that by doing the analysis. So I think that's number one. Number two, though, is what is best for you personally, not only for your family, but for yourself and for, other leaders in your business, because people can come with a big check, but if it's not like, what are you going to do after? What are you going to invest your time into? Is there something else that you're excited about? Are you excited about the continuation of being in that business with new leadership, maybe larger scale? Or do you want to do something else entirely? Or do you really love what you do and you love the control that you have and the ownership that you have and the ability to affect your community in just the way that you want? Because then selling is not the best option. So I think I see both sides. I see sometimes people feeling very reticent to sell because of legacy and history and, relationships in the community. When the market is changing, this is really the best way to capitalize on the investment and what they've built. And then I see some people who are just have decided, I'm going to sell because maybe they've had a rough couple of years, like you said, or, well, I see other people selling, maybe I should too. You really want to think about, what does the future look like for you and for your family and for the people in your business? Because it could lead down either path, I think. Those would be my thoughts on whether or not to sell. I don't think there's any one right decision. It is very specific to what the offer is too. What is the offer? What is it on a multiple of EBITDA? Is it actually a good offer? And obviously in both situations for me with different businesses, they were very different situations, and they had to be considered very differently.
That's really interesting. And I think more and more funeral homeowners are now going to start coming up with these questions because, one, I think the tradition of passing it down is not as common as it maybe once was, right? And also there is a lot more money coming into the space. So their acquisition is going to be big. But I want to go back to, so that's kind of like the tail end, I guess, of the business. But you have helped launch more brands probably on the cremation side than traditional. I think everyone now is launching a cremation brand. What are some of the biggest challenges you see in helping advise people in starting a new cremation brand?
The first is the two hats that we talked about, right? People understanding this is basically completely unrelated to full service. I mean, there's some similarities, but you've got to think about the business very differently. And you said cost of acquisition, that is a primary driver in a digital business. What is your return on ad spend? Very important. Less important in a full service business that has an established brand, has a lot of word of mouth, has a lot of relationships in the community. It's still there. It's still, right? I mean, whenever you're doing digital marketing, you should know, right, what you're getting for the marketing that you're spending and feeling like it's a good investment. But on a digital business that has no brand recognition, no clientele, no word of mouth, you really have to think about it even more. And I've encouraged businesses to track return on ad spend, to think about it monthly, to look at it, to measure themselves against that. And it's interesting because I think it's both. It's on all aspects of the spectrum. Some people think, I'm going to dump a lot of money into this. I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to do it and it'll pan out. And if it's not panning out right away, they're like, that's okay. It's going to take a while. No, hold yourself to that return on ad spend or that cost per acquisition so that you're going in the right direction. Are we getting better? Are we getting more effective? Are we getting more efficient? You should know that. but I find most funeral homes being more conservative, being less familiar with the digital world, are actually on the other side of the spectrum. And they think with a couple $100, I can grow a digital brand. And that's not true either, right? Like you do have to invest not only at the beginning, but also on an ongoing basis into digital marketing for a digital brand. It's always going to be part of it. I've had some people say, well, when can I stop paying this pay per click? You're not going to stop paying the pay per click. It's just part of, it's like, location upkeep. You've got to drive people to this place. And pay per click is one of the most effective ways of doing that. So I think it's really transforming the way you think about a business, and embracing it as digital first is a really important part of that, because the things that from your full service business are not the right rules of thumb in general with this kind of business.
Yeah, we see that a lot. I think the hat switch is probably the number one factor. It's like, if you can't understand that this is a different type of business, it doesn't matter what website you have, a ranger you have, or
right.
Whatever marketing you put in there. You really have to have that switch. So you were working at MKJ, which is the family business, but you kind of came back into it, and you were there, and then there was a big change, I would say, after about 6 years there, and kind of changed your path of what you probably were seeing when you jumped in.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that transition was like?
Sure. Yeah. So when we joined Tribute, we were never looking to sell or, certainly walk away from the business. Instead, what this was, when we joined Tribute, we really viewed it as an expansion of what we do. We'd served around 3,000 customers at MKJ and our, on an annual basis in different ways, some in a very deep, we were everything for their marketing. Others, it might be a couple brochures, things like that, right? But we were very well known in the funeral profession for understanding the customer, understanding great marketing and advertising. But we really felt like Tribute offered the ability to integrate our deep professional expertise with technology. And we had launched websites, we had created planners, but what we were seeing increasingly was the need for integrated solutions across a lot of different technology stacks, the need for very high level of security. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't see the AI thing at that point really to the extent it is now, but it would have been even more important to me back then, because AI is changing so much. I just even think about obituary piracy, and hacking and spam and things like that it would have been very hard for us as a small company to keep up with. And instead, what we really valued was being able to access best in class technology with Tribute and the incredible developers and technologists who come in from outside of the profession. But we were able to bring the deep experience in the profession to guide that, to say, this is what funeral homes need. We would always kind of laugh, my parents and I, that everyone's coming in to disrupt funeral service. That's always the saying. We just want to help professionals, funeral directors, cremation businesses, cemeterians, to do more of what they're doing in an efficient way, in an effective way, in a way that really meets the customer needs. And so we're not looking to disrupt, we're looking to support, we're looking to preserve in a lot of ways. But preserving means shifting and adapting and pivoting to the technology and to the changing consumer needs. So we think we can do that even better from Tribute and that platform. And obviously it's evolved. Becoming president of commercial markets for Tribute has allowed me to really tap into where are we going strategically as a business, and again, serve the funeral homes first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this was probably not as big of news to funeral homeowners and operators as maybe it was from the vendor side, because I remember how shocked I was. It was the first time a software roll up in this space had happened, and still the largest one today by magnitudes. And there were a few notable names that were brought together. MKJ being one of them, CFS, Fraser, from like all these huge names in software that kind of touched, I would say, the majority of the market. But personally, and I don't know how many of our listeners are going to be as interested, but I'm personally interested, like what it was like moving from working at a family-owned business, that serves a couple thousand funeral homes to all of a sudden in 2 to 3 years becoming kind of one of like the highest ranking people at a billion-dollar tech company that serve multiples and multiples more customers. What is that like? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely things that were learning curves for sure. I always feel like entrepreneurs are important in every size of business, whether you own it or whether you're, I think they call them entrepreneurs, people who are thinking about what's next, how do we get there, going to the grassroots of an issue, coming up with an MVP, iterating on it, being unafraid to fail. And I think that's really been something I've leaned on inside of Tribute. We have leaders from all different backgrounds, but my background is developing businesses, at that ground level, working with customers very directly. My parents and I and my husband at MKJ, we were the people who took out the trash, much like our owners, right? And so that's kind of our mentality. Like if there's a challenge, if there's an issue, like we will go and solve it at every level of the business. And obviously that's not quite the same today, but it's still the mentality that I take. I take those customer issues very seriously. And if customers are not being attended to, then I'm finding out why, right? And getting to the end of that, as well as how do we develop and deliver at scale a solution to that? So if we're hearing a lot of issues, how do we really solve that at a macro level, not just for that one customer? And I think that, my background in corporate law, because I worked for a big law firm, helped me to understand how a large business needs to function. So my only experience was not a family business. It was also from that corporate law perspective. And, but I think I came into Tribute as chief marketing officer, leaning on the things that I knew, right? I definitely know how to market for funeral homes and how, what they need to be successful and how to market to funeral homes, how to communicate to them in a way that they appreciate and understand. And then it was just over time, more and more, I would take on more responsibility and help to guide things. And again, it was just from that entrepreneurial mindset of, can't we do this better? What if we tried this? Would this work? And to me, leadership, what's always the most important are the people that you bring onto the team and how you motivate them, how you set a compelling vision for them, whether that's a team of 2 people like at Lumen, or whether it's a team of 450 people at Tribute. How do we set a vision that's compelling? How do we share with everybody the why behind what we do? I've started the day in the life of a funeral director training for our team because we have hundreds of people who've never experienced funeral service before. And so they need to understand who our customers are and what they need and why they would want to use our technology. What are the benefits to them? What are the questions that they're going to have? What are the challenges that they'll have? So I really lead from a place of we understand the customer's needs first. And that goes back to my parents. They always said we learn the most from just listening to our customers. So a lot of it's the basics, but I think the basics are really what lead to success generally.
I really like that you have that day in the life thing. We actually do that here too, where we have the funeral directors that worked in funeral homes like teach all of our staff about a topic every once in a while. And I think there's a lot that people don't know, even though you work with funeral directors or funeral homes every day. There's just like these weird nuances that will shape decisions on how they do and why they do things, that it really helps paint a better picture.
Well, and it's not just operationally, what do they do? That's basics, and we all got to know that for sure. But it's also mindset. It's also like, what are the pressures that they're experiencing? And I did live that, with Lumen. There were times where I would take the call in the middle of the night because my team was, sick or on vacation or something. Or, one of the things that was humbling and funny to me was, I'd come up with this digital first business, and, I had this back end that would show every case that's much like Parting Pro, show you how many cases you had, what did they order, et cetera, et cetera. And what did my director do but go and get a whiteboard and hang it on the wall? I love her. But that was her comfort, and it felt comfortable to her to just write it out. And as technologists, we need to be aware of what those comforts are and how we can, if we really believe it's necessary, overcome it, and now with multi-location places, it is necessary. It is necessary, but we need to be aware that that's going to be like a security blanket for a lot of people. And how do we meaningfully help them move to the next stage, aware of those, I don't know, emotional preferences that we all have. We all have it. I still have a paper calendar, right? I mean, there's just things that we all have. And so I think mindset, personas, all of that is just so important to thinking about our customers and serving them well.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I kind of want to move into the exciting news part of today. You were also very exciting. This was also very exciting. But,
no, this is exciting though. I'm also excited about this.
We do have, I do want to talk about this.
Yeah. Well, so what I'm excited about is that I've long recognized Parting Pro as one of the very best in the business. I think you all have built an incredible planner, not only because it's really seamless and beautiful and easy to use for the family, but what I found in building custom planners for clients was, when you custom code something, that it's kind of stuck. It's not flexible. It's not easy to update. And what always impressed me about the way that you built Parting Pro was how flexible it is, how easy to update it is, the back end, the time and attention you all have taken to build software well. And so knowing that, when we were looking for integration partners for our tribute websites, I reached out to you to say, would you integrate with us? Would you integrate with tribute management software, with our SRS software? And can we come together with a tribute website, experience from obituaries and things like that, and really give this amazing experience for the planner to not only the funeral homes, but the families together. And I'm so thrilled that you were open to partnering with us, because I am always looking for how do we deliver the very best experience to everybody. And Parting Pro does that for your planner. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
I'm excited too. I mean, we traditionally have not partnered with a lot of people. We've not integrated with a lot of people. Part of that is we are still very small, like a startup. So, what we work on is very important. But I think the one thing that I wanted to mention here is that this is all customer driven. We all want to make, as someone who's serving customers, who our customers are the funeral homes, I think working with other businesses makes sense because it just makes it better for them, right? Passing data between each other, making sure that we can support so that their job is easier. That's all we're really trying to do. And so that's why this partnership made a lot of sense. And I think is very interesting because we don't do it with many. So it was a very interesting, I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, you're right that this did originate from a customer who was saying, can't you integrate my software with Parting Pro? And so it was customer driven. And I think it's continuing to be as we see customers say, yeah, now I can have both of these. Amazing. But I do value your investment into this because, speaking from the perspective of MKJ, integrations are expensive. It was a big part of what, again, I was looking for to achieve with Tribute was the ability to integrate across things. And so, I know our teams are working together to make this possible, but it is an investment, and it is something that we give to our customers when we feel this is really going to drive the most benefit for their business. And I know it will, because you all think about moving through the online planning process, conversion first. How do we eliminate friction? How do we make it easy for the family to go through and plan a cremation quickly? as well as the funeral home to manage it on the back end. Hopefully not with a whiteboard in their office too, but
we have so many stories that we can share of customers and like what we've transitioned them from, but yeah,
I bet.
Hopefully not.
A lot of paper and pen, but you don't need to with your system. And now it'll integrate into, accounting and management software and e-sign and all kinds of flexibility and capability that tribute management software and SRS offer to the market. So very excited and appreciate your trust in us as a partner for you and your clients.
Oh, of course, you too. Like I said, this is something that we wanted to do, and I think is going to be very beneficial for all of our mutual customers and new customers too, looking for new options. So, perfect. So you've had this interesting path where you've seen death care from all sides, and I talk to people who are deeply rooted into one side or the other. Usually, like they've been vendors for a long time, they've served funeral homes, or they've served families. But you kind of come to this place where you've done both. So my question is, like, where do you see death care going? Like, what does the next 10 years of death care look like? Just from your perspective, obviously.
I think that there's so many aspects of death care that are going to change over the next 10 years. I mean, when I think back about 10 years ago, the rise in not only direct cremation, but digital focus that it has for full service businesses as well. Obviously, AI is a huge entrant to that. That's going to be important for us to all wrestle with the right role of AI in customer service and back office work, different aspects of that. But ultimately, I think the consumer will drive the change in our profession. And what the consumers want, at least from what we can tell right now, is really personalized experiences, both in the planning and in the execution. So I want it my way, very, very specifically to what, and I think it can depend and change on the relationship with the deceased, where they are at in life as well. So, what experience I'm looking for with one relationship might be very, very different than for another. What I'm looking at when the death is far away from me and local, very, very different, again, based on the person who's died, but also as a next of kin or a funeral planner, what am I thinking about? I think we're going to see a rise in people wanting to do it yourself. And that can take a lot of different formats. Sometimes it's in the ability to get on and do a great online plan in 10 minutes, right? And for other people, it's highly customized receptions and services that are really, really, really personal, and they're willing to do what it takes to deliver that. When I think about like the birthday parties that are thrown, around me for just a 5-year-old, and it's all the favors, the money put into so many things, and like, these are the same people who are going to be planning the funerals very, very soon. And they just expect to do that Pinterest funeral, right? Especially for somebody that they were really close to. So I think DIY is an online, that's a trend that we're going to engage with in a lot of different ways. One trend that I think is really, really tough, and I hope we can overcome this, but I was talking to a client the other day who said, after COVID, people are just really critical and much more likely to be negative, much more likely to focus on the thing that didn't go well instead of giving credit to the funeral home for all of the things that did go well. And I think this goes across businesses, et cetera. But I think we have to reckon with that as a society, as well as in our space of like, how do we deliver great experiences when the consumer is ever more critical of what can go wrong and what wasn't said, what wasn't done. So I think that's going to be another important trend we need to reckon with. One of my favorite ideas about the future came from a friend of mine who helped me think about my cremation business. He actually was a executive at Amazon, not from the funeral space. And he's like, what about a mobile crematory that would go around and be outside your door and, have the cremation right there on your property? I don't know. I don't rule that out. That's something
I don't know how much advantage that would be.
I don't know either, but it's always kind of intrigued me. And, I do think when we think 10 years out, a lot is possible about where death care will go. Certainly rising cremation rate, not going to, I think that's going to just continue. But there's a lot. There's a lot that I wonder about, but technology is going to be a huge part of it. And I think technology helping the funeral homes be the most effective they can be, because these staffing crises and challenges that we have are very real.
Yeah.
And I think they're shaping more of people's experience with funeral service than they should. So we need to preserve our directors, not only time, but energy for that very difficult work of being creative, sitting down and listening to people, being that emotional resource for them, and not the people who are chasing down death certificates and things that hopefully we can solve with technology more and more.
I think specialization and segmentation in your business is super important. So
huge. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you talking with me. I think your story is actually really, really interesting, because you're not coming at it from just one side. Like, you have the experience on both. And I think that makes your advice like 10 times more valuable when you say it, because not everyone here, I mean, we've had people that have been in the industry for 20, 30 years, but they still have only really seen it from one side. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. It gave me a greater appreciation for not only the work that our funeral homes do, but the pressures on them with pricing. I think a lot of times as vendors, we can think, well, just increase your package price. Well, that's not so easy to do, especially when you have competition. But it also helped me to kind of debunk some myths, things that, I'd heard from directors that I respect. But, when I tried it a different way, you learn something else. So, it's given me a great insight into the experience for our funeral homes every day. And I'm so grateful to have had that experience and bring that into the decisions that I make, the strategies that direct tribute every day, and that I hope serve our profession at large.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Courtney. I am excited for our partnership, not only for ourselves, but also obviously for the funeral homes that will benefit from it, because we obviously both wouldn't be doing this if it didn't benefit our clients. So I really appreciate it. Well, thank you. If there's anything else, is there anywhere people can find you that you want to share?
All over the place, I think. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've been posting there a lot about things that are happening inside and as a part of Tribute. I also do share insights there from time to time. Obviously, tributetech.com. You can find a lot of resources there, free resources. We just did a great resource that's been very popular. That's how to train AI for your brand, and it can work for a direct cremation brand too. So go grab that. That's a great resource. But yeah, I just really enjoy being here talking to you. Direct cremation is one of my favorite topics. So I'll come back anytime you want me to talk about it. But
awesome. Oh no, I'll be happy to have you again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again.
All right. Well, thank you, Courtney, for the Direct Cremation Podcast. I'm Tyler Yamasaki. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you ever want to know more, please find us at directcremation.com.